I got you people. Things are getting heated up, man, because every time I hear something, everything is just out of control, chaos. Everything just messed up. And if you get into all this political thing that's going on, because everything's political, right? And it creates tension, and people are uncertainty, and they start panicking and start thinking they got to go on survival mode and do things, But you got to be careful, because America always got a plan, man. Whoever's on top always got a plan. So now we got these problems with the Latinos and the blacks now. I don't know how all that came together, right? Because everybody knew if Donald Trump was going to win, he was going to do a mass deportation in the history of mankind, he said, right? He said it. So everybody was aware of what he was going to do, and everybody voted for him. The thing is that people are getting this confused, right? The Latinos that voted for him have voting rights. Most of the other Latinos that came in were supposed to get IDs, and they were getting IDs, right? New York City IDs and all that, because the Democrats wanted their party to win. So they was letting all these, migrants come in, all these Spanish-speaking people from other countries to come into America, so the Democratic Party could still stay in office and power. But it did not work. It doesn't matter. Even Kamala Harris was up to be the first female president of America, right? But they didn't go for that. Even blacks didn't vote for her. They didn't take her stories, whatever she was saying that she was gonna do for her black counterparts. Some of them would say that she wasn't even black. She was pretending to be a black person, which she's not. There's a lot of things that go on, right? So now they're saying that the Latinos that didn't vote for Kamala Harris, they get what they deserve. But those people that came into the border and open borders, they didn't have to vote, right? People that were registered to vote, those were the ones that voted for Donald Trump. It had nothing to do that the Latinos voted for the wrong person. No. Everybody knew what Donald Trump was going to do, because he said it out openly. He was going to start a mass deportation. And he accomplished that, and that's why he's doing it. He's still doing it. The thing is that most of these people don't want to leave, right? They want to stay. Forcibly, they don't want to hear about it. They want to stay, and they got other relatives or friends that are protecting them and protesting for them. And now they say, right, the Latinos are asking blacks to join into them to help them in these protests, and these blacks don't want to join. And I agree with them, because I know what's gonna happen, but I say that later, right? So a lot of blacks don't want to join in because they say it's not their fight, and these Latinos should fight for their own self, because they wasn't there for the so-called blacks. Now most blacks that grew up don't know what the Browns went to. That's another thing when they say brown, Hispanic. Just because you speak Hispanic or you brown, that doesn't mean you come from that same race of people, right? Because all black people are not the same, and all black people don't speak Africans, right? Most Africans don't speak English, and the word English that the blacks are speaking here today it's not their language. So see the hypocrisy when it goes on back and forth. But now you got the FBA not agreeing with these Latinos. They say that the Latinos are racist because they're racist towards blacks, that they never were with them in protests that they were doing, right? They just follow the blacks so they could get credit as a minority, to get credibility in these protests. So that's the fight. And there's this new group called the FBA, right? These are new young black man and woman. I see more man than woman though, but I don't know if there's a group of female, FBAs out there. But they like being too harsh on the Hispanic group. that are asking them for help. You know, they're just criticizing and bashing them, because I know that there's a little war, but this is all gang related stuff. That's what I mean. You cannot mix those things together, right? So they say they don't want to help these Chicanos or Cholos or whatever you want to call them, you know, Mexicans, Hispanics, Latinos, whatever. They don't want to help them because they got animosity against each other, right? The Mexicans don't like the blacks, and the blacks don't like the Mexicans, and they fighting each other, things like that. That's all from jail. You cannot mix one thing with the other. So that's what's going on. Everybody's fighting with each other. And don't you know that the Mexicans fought wars too with the French, with the Spaniards, and now America, and now they're fighting with the American blacks? Because now blacks don't want to join in the fight, and that's the struggle now. And the FBA, those people are too young to understand what a struggle is. None of these young men and women, let's put them, because I don't know if they there, never been through a struggle. They never been slave. They don't know how to be from day all the way to night picking or doing hard labor, living in shacks. You never experienced that, though. So I understand why you got this so much animosity against, you know, other groups of people that probably did the same thing. Maybe you didn't see it. You wasn't born to see these things, man. You just hearing stories and you repeating it. You reminiscing on things that you don't know nothing about. I don't understand why these young people got so much hatred against other people. Then they say that they're racist, but you being unfair racist about these things. You know, you want everybody to help, but you being combative against other people that you don't know nothing about. You know? And I understand if you don't want to help them protest, but you know, I support everybody, yo. But I'm not gonna like I said, I'm not gonna risk my life because I got a family just to go out there and to protest and get killed or some shit like that, you know. But I got a family to protect too, so that's why you gotta be careful. You know, most of these people that are protesting, they're probably not even the real immigrants out there. Those are probably people that are citizens to the country just supporting the cause, right? Because if you get caught out there with no papers or whatever, you're going to get caught and deported or whatever. So that's the problem with this, man. So I don't understand why blacks are being so spiteful to these immigrants. Because remember, once upon a time, everybody was enslaved by the European countries, right? And you was not white, you were color, and you was forced to do things you didn't want to do, right? Forced labor, you know, with no questions asked. If you didn't do it, you know, you get disciplined, you get punished, you know, you get whipped and things like that. You get, you know, bit by dogs. So that's another thing he said. No Mexican or Chicano he never seen get bitten by a dog, dude. You probably wasn't even born at that time. When all these things started, you wasn't even born. You just born now in a privileged era. That's why you could be on YouTube and say whatever you want. But you're not out there really supporting anybody. You're just supporting yourself because you know that YouTube is going to probably send you a little check. That's what you're doing. But you're not out there fighting for anybody. You probably didn't even serve this country. You so-called want to be American, then nobody here is an American. Everybody here is an immigrant. I will say that, and I always going to say it to the end I part from this earth. Man, it's just, people just don't get along. You know what I think? I would say that black people have so much anger because they got this white DNA blood in them, and they're just furious that one of their ancestors has to be a white grandfather or a white grandmother. Come on, look it up. When you came here, and even Taínos, right? My people, right? The Boricuas, the Puerto Ricans, we have DNA from the Europeans too. Either one of our ancestors had to be a great white European or great grandfather that was white, because we all were enslaved. So that's what I think. Blacks cannot just take it because they just don't get along. I would say that I had a friend in the army, and I was telling whites will never get along, and blacks will never get along with each other because of that. They just have so much animosity against each other because the slavery that they was put into. And you know, most of them think that the whites just went over there and took them off their land. I thought of the same too, but as other research came by, did you know that your own people, your own African people sold you out to another group of people? So you cannot just blame the whites. Your own people sold you out. And you mad. I don't understand why blacks are so mad. You know that back in the days, blacks was proud to be black and they would put their own names. But now you hear blacks with English names and Spanish names. A black name named Charles. You ever heard of a guy named Charles named Black? A black girl named Maria, a Carmen. You never heard of that, right? But now, yeah, they started knowing that they put a black name on their application, they might not get higher. So black people started getting smarter and started getting simple names besides putting Tyrone or Tyrese, Keisha, things like that. So they started changing their names so that they could get better employments, because they knew the names that they were using was not getting them higher. Because back in the days, employers used to screen people's name. They would tell what kind of race there was and what nationality. And those are the people that they would push in to get higher employment. They started getting smart. You hear black people's named Johnson's, Charles, Jimmy, a black dude named Jimmy. Come on. Williams. Those are all white names, and most of us Spanish people got European Spanish names. We all know that, but we don't make a big deal out of it. But, it's bad that people don't get together. And another reason why I don't think, and I'm saying this, that blacks shouldn't go out there and try to protest with the Latinos. You know why? Because things might shift, and then they're going to go after the blacks. And they like to, put more pressure on the blacks. They're probably going to shift and start shooting the blacks, send those like them. Because, they know what's going to happen is blacks be out there. They're going to probably shift the ISIS and all that and turn them all against the blacks. And then the blacks are going to have a problem. And that's what I think maybe blacks don't want to get involved, and they shouldn't get involved, Because things happen mostly, right? The country got rules now. Even though I know that is wrong because the Europeans came here without any papers. And how is it that a nation that doesn't really belong here got control and controls everything, so that's crazy. So I say that in my mind, how could this country be owned by somebody? The Indians, the native Indians are on reservations. They don't even come out and things like that. They don't come out because they promise if they stay in the reservation, they get a check. That's why they're there. Imagine that. So in order for you to get this check freely, you got to be in a reservation or have your own state with your own constitution. But America's not gonna let that shit happen, especially if you color. Remember, if you color, you have no rights, right? You gotta be white to have rights. But if you color, you don't have no rights. No matter how much English you speak, how much degrees you get, you're not gonna be the same as a white person, as a European person. You know that right now the West, the American people that so-called American that speak English, European whites don't even get along with them because they're not the same people. Those people descended from Europe and came to the New World, America, and detached. They have no attachment to Europe anymore. The history and them in Europe dismantled. They have no history. They had to create a brand new history, just like the Africans that left Africa and came to the North America had to leave that behind. That's why none of them goes back over there. And most of them don't even get along. Black Americans and African Americans just don't get along. And you know that. And he's saying that. So Latinos are not the only racist people, right? You got Africans that don't like Black Americans. You like Black Americans that know that Africans don't like Black Americans. Just like that. And that's not the only country that's been fighting for rights. Puerto Rico's been fighting for independence for years. But Puerto Rico's a small island, but Puerto Ricans are all over the world now too. So it expands. You got to know how to. You know what's wrong with most black people? They never left the country. That's why they keep on jumping from one state to another state. South Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama, things that they were, and their ancestors were enslaved to, and they keep on going back to things that were oppressed. And if they go to their history and they sign, they get oppressed. You know, you got to get a passport and relax and just leave. Yo, the world is big. Believe me, you're gonna find out. When I was in the service and I was traveling, but I knew, I said, it can't be that bad. Come on. Europeans were all over the world. I was saying, how can these people be in another part of the world and own real estate in another country? You know, they can do that. We should be able to do that. So I started saying, wait a minute, if they can do that, why can't I do it, right? I come from the same country, right? I'm in the service, and they could travel, I can travel, right? They could have a piece of property in another country. I should be able to have that. So, you know, you got to think like that. Yo, you trap yourself in one country. That's why you have all this anger and animosity against the wrong people, man. The government keeps you like that. And I would say, the government is not your friend, people. You're a slave to this country and government, and they don't care about you. Once you leave their service, their branches or whatever, you are nothing to them. Your service contract is over, and that's it. You got to take care of yourself, and you got to be at peace, people. You got to be at peace with your neighbors and things like that. You cannot be fighting every single day. You're not gonna feel right. You're always gonna have to. You're gonna have a chip on your shoulders. Look, and I'll give you one, because I said this before, and I said it again so people understand. When I used to, van with another Mexican, right? Because another veteran called me up, and I was helping him out, and I ran into this white boy, an older white person. Yeah, he knows, but I listen to him. I don't really get angry at people. I like to listen because I like to learn. You get wisdom from learning from other people. So he told me, listen, Tony, I don't like you, and I don't like your people, and I don't like to go to Harlem, and I don't like to go to the South Bronx, but this is all business. I like what you got, and I'm going to buy it from you, but I still don't like it. This is all business. That's what you got to learn. You in this country for business. The politicians and everybody in office and government, to them, this is all business. You ain't nothing. As long as you could exchange something they need in income and exchange money or services, that's all that matters. Yo, this is all capitalist country, and everything is about business. Your ideas and your opinion don't matter unless you're going to bring some value to someone else. And that's what the white boy told me. And I didn't say anything. I didn't get mad. I didn't tell him I don't like you either. I just said, okay. As long as he comes to me and buy my product, because that's what he was doing. He said, you got the best prices. Then they're not so low. That's about you, I get what I want, and you get my money, and everything is happy. And it was exactly like that. He would come by, I get the money, and that was it. I don't know. People just got so much animosity, and you talk to people that just bring you more trouble, right? Talking about slavery, how you shouldn't trust these people, that these people did this to our ancestors. Everybody went through this struggle. Everybody, even whites were slaves. Remember, back in the 14, even worse than the 1400s, right? Maybe in the 11th centuries or whatever, the medieval time, these white people were killing themselves. They would steal from their neighbors. They were, rape their own children. They were in chaos. They would rob from their own neighbors, enslave their own people. But once they found out that it wasn't from the Spaniards that left the sea, Christopher Columbus exploded, they would have never had the opportunity that they made themselves more powerful and more rich, because the indigenous people and the native people had green land, right? They had lands of paradise. When they went there, they couldn't believe it. It was so green. And they stole from every indigenous group and every colored people that was out there, even the Arabs, the Indians, everybody. They stole from everybody that wasn't white. They stole from everybody. So you shouldn't take it out on just Hispanics and things like that. We did not start this fight. We did not start this trouble. We never came from our Caribbean native land. The Indians never came out of the Benin and went to Europe. Europe came to us and created all these problems. And you got to understand that. You got to stop fighting with each other. If you don't want to support anybody, don't support them. But you don't want to create fights just to get a paycheck from YouTube. And with that, people, I let you go and you think about that. It's not worth your life to create problems that you're not ready for. With that, I let you go.